Thank you for the opportunity of speaking to you guys today, and I'm going to go through a presentation which is talking a little bit about, I'm not going to go on about the psychological terms, but essentially weaving the theme of thinking about people and psychology, and in terms of what I've done within Barclaycard and my experiences and learns doing UX in a big corporation. And hopefully, some of it will resonate. Hopefully, there'll be some useful bits. If not, thank you for listening. So the first thing, a little bit about me. You may have seen, on the LinkedIn, you'll see that I've been in the bank, like I said, many years. I've done lots of different roles in the organisation. But what isn't on there, and I was thinking about just adding this in because it defines a little bit about how I've approached building a team and sorting out my function within the bank. My backgrounds actually are largely in small businesses. I was put around all the family businesses when I was younger. When I was 14, I set up a little cleaning business and ran that for about 5-6 years before I started university. And also I was involved in the family consultancy for many years until we kind of closed that down, which was focused on building teams. It was doing board development, etc. And I think that's basically shaped how I've worked in my organisation, very much sometimes with a very small business mindset within a large organisation. So, another thing about me is I'm a new parent. I've just come out of, I'm actually the 11th week of adoption leave, so I'm fairly terrified because I feel like my business brain's gone, and this is the first time I've got on stage in front of people for some time. And I'm gonna humour me for a second of just talking about my son a little bit, because a lot of what I talk about here, I think, is common sense. The whole adoption process was about 1.5 years, and I basically had a new user coming into my home. So a new user of the home, new user of maternal services. And through the year process, I didn't get to meet that little man until a week. I met him for the first time a week before he came home. So I did research, I spoke to his previous foster carers, I spoke to the social workers, I read online, toddlers, he's 2.5, etc., etc. And to me, that was just, like I said, it's just natural to want to know as much as possible from a wide variety of different sources, data points, even, before I could actually ask him. And for me, that's in business, that's what also is, it's common sense for me that we understand as much as possible when we are designing products and services about our customers. So, my team within design and data, so a bit of context, and I'll talk about this in a second, is I sit in operations and technology. Again, if you want to talk about where does design sit in the organisation, I could go on about that till the cows come home, but it certainly changes things where your function doing design sits in the organisation. And I'm going to use the word design to encompass my entire team, by the way. So Barclays is very complicated. It's a big business. I serve the Barclaycard arm. That is 6 different businesses. By the way, I haven't got my notes, so I'm busy trying to memorise my data. But basically, we're the number one issuing card in the UK. We are the second largest acquirer in Europe. We are in the US. We are the 5th largest co-branded card. We do payments and credit card. We're B2B and B2C. It's global. My team personally, it is based in India, US, Germany and the UK. And our business is incredibly complicated. Everything's always changing, stakeholders are changing, how we do things, strategies, the broader strategies remains the same, but the kind of the team strategies change. When I picked up the design team, which came and joined my data team, they had already been sitting there for 2.5 years with 5 different bosses. I actively chased that team because I wanted it to sit with data, because I'm passionate about data-led design. And I also wanted to nurture and settle that team, give them some priorities and really fulfill the potential I saw in the UX space. So that's the complexity we live in within our business. And within the team, I've got UI design, UX design, set up new UX research and test. That was the first internal in-house we had in the bank. We used external providers prior to that. UX copy, I call it UX copy because copy was hidden right the way down in things, and copy is very important. And again, when you start getting into the science of copy, psychology and the research, and it's phenomenal. I mean, what you can change in terms of your results is amazing with copy. It's not just your grammar and spelling, and so raise that right up there. Data development, delivery and analysis. So again, in my team, I also do data requirements, because with the data piece, we're looking at the existing information, and getting data right is really important. I mean, I'm a huge fan of data, but that's not what this presentation is about. And then another piece, which is user process management and improvement. What's that? That kind of sits more on the operations side. So my team, they do, that particular area of the team, do a lot of governance. They see through a lot of audits. They do a lot of hygiene factors. They understand business rules. And just remember that when I start talking a little bit about pulling all those people together, because there's some quite different skill sets within that. So, a few key challenges for design and data in our organisation. One, they don't get what we do. How many times is they don't get what we do, they don't understand design, and really understanding what our function can provide. Another one is being utilised at all levels. So the first one is being involved right up front in terms of the strategic space. So being involved in the strategic definition of things, upfront thinking, pre-inception, but also sometimes just being involved in a project. Sometimes I think they don't need us. We don't need that. And that's crazy. And then the third challenge is red tape, process, how we do things, navigating the organisation in terms of the organisation itself. So, some of the things that I did, and we started with the team getting together. So the first thing, can you all see you can't see that one, that's supposed to be funny. Why do we exist? Because it was going back to basics, who, what, why, and how. Why are you here? What are we really here to do? Because if you don't get that clear within yourself, how can you really build a successful team? And it seems like basics, but it's really going back to those basics to discuss as a group how you do things. And also, as a team, when we kind of went through, it started to become apparent that, people didn't even understand what I sit within the digital organisation, broader digital team who will do all the development, the tech teams, and people didn't really understand what everybody else did. And even within my own team, I do random questions and they couldn't answer them. So the first thing is almost this one, is get your own house in order. Really start questioning, debating, what is our, what are our guiding principles as well. And I'm hesitant about saying, we branded ourselves, we said this is how we operate, this is our kind of, buzzwords in terms of our vision. But we did go through some of that, but it was more around getting an ethos within the team around what is our modus operandi and how do we also operate. And some of those things are curiosity, asking the question, getting out there and prioritizing, talking to the entire team. What are your big issues? What are the problems we need to put on the table and use to our own skills to start solving in terms of how we actually function in our own team? And a lot of this was also about just bringing people together to just keep talking, hammering it through. And there is a point where it will get boring because it's like there's a lot of talking, but you have to put that time in order for the team to bond. Because bringing the team together, and this is where, again, you'll start thinking about some of the psychological pieces. especially when I started listening to the data guys, pure analytical guys talking to the design guys. It could sometimes be like watching left brain, right brain. And I had conflict, they want to make us do the process, they don't get design, or they don't get data, and actually when they started getting beyond that, they started seeing about how the similarities between them, how they could help one another, and also focusing on, like I said, we sat there in terms of what's our shared goals, what are our big problems, and you started to see a shift in how we operated as a team and how we collaborated a team. I did a few things around, rather than doing a full Myers-Briggs and, colours and having them on the desk to say, well, I'm a blue and I'm a yellow. What I did instead was just, factoring little things in as just reminders. So you're constantly sort of prodding everybody's kind of thoughts around, the reminders around you are different, like doing a Myers-Briggs was a Simpsons thing. Making sure that we do things where I noticed these guys don't work well together. I'm giving them a mini project over there, which is part of developing our team. Looking at how we bring up prominence of each kind of people within the team in terms of, again, mini projects, listening to their ideas around what they want to come through, so revamping the intranet site. This then set the foundation, the absolute foundation of spending that time getting a gelled team. Because unless we know how to communicate and sort out between us, how can we communicate to the wider organisation? And the other part of this was also looking, after we had that discussion of what, why, where, and who, it's like, what do we actually offer? So some of the things we started doing was really, yes, we had design language there, but it wasn't being upfront and it wasn't being factored into all our different delivery processes. Looking at the processes that the governance processes, the red tape. So how do we then talk to different parts of the organisation to make sure that we're in the checklists? And people in our team, like the operations side of things, they knew people that other people didn't know, so they could go and have a chat with them. Building relationships with legal, getting them up front into our process, putting copy into design language, making sure that we did a kind of whole look at all of our tooling, doing a tooling assessment. I know this is, again, hygiene factors, but these are all the things that really kind of got us to where we started saying, we know what we do, we know how we do it, and then we start acting it out. Because this was the big problem, okay? So that was all getting our house in order, etc., etc. But the first thing is, and just previous to this, the other bit about this, and this is again where, around psychology, is when you look at your customers, when you look at 5 minutes left, when you look at your customers, the one thing you do know about your customers is they're humans, okay? So even if you can't do any testing or anything else, you can look at the principles of how you actually work with those customers and as in what you apply. So you can look at reciprocation theory, you can look at how you do research without actually having to touch the customer. You have some basics. We applied this as well in terms of also how we went to our stakeholders. Because one of the things they weren't doing, and I've probably taken too long for the introduction, is they weren't applying their skills to our internal customers. They didn't know who the stakeholders were. They're your users of your service. So, again, it was giving away some things for free. It was building some relationships, inviting them in. It was looking at different communication styles. So you don't go, this is my one presentation. Some people prefer to have things visually. Some things prefer to have the detail. It was about being practical around how you actually broke down what your problems were and how you got the stakeholders to really understand what you offered, how you offered it. We built this up through doing collaboration, but not just, we're just all doing collaboration, proving ourselves. We got advocates. We built advocacy like you do. You talk about NPS externally. How about your NPS internally? You think about how you apply what you do to the organisation. And also, there was a lot of business development in terms of, a lot of my team didn't understand commercial skills. They needed to relearn some commercial skills, the priority of the business. They needed to understand what the business priorities were. So when they were saying, business don't get design, sometimes it's because the business was saying, we don't want the full fat delivery where you do everything perfectly. Actually, we're happy with just good enough for now. And there was conflict around listening to that and actually listening to the needs of the customer. So a lot of the things we did that was, again, how we communicated, and we did a lot of battling this as well, because this is the hippo, the highly important person's opinion. This can be from a product owner to an exec, right? And the thing is with this is that you've also got to look at, rather than just saying they're wrong, how do you now use what you understand to say, okay, fine, let's have what you have, let's take it and let's do a quick bit of guerrilla testing. Let's work on how we actually talk with you to communicate and break this down. Also, sometimes is that the right person? So product owners, for instance, we had a whole issue around booting out UX, product owners, BAs doing the requirements. And when I went over to, and started kind of talking to everybody about this, I had designers who were saying, I'm not having my name to it, I will never compromise my standards. But on the business side, they were saying, we're getting the pressure from exec, we're going to lose our funding unless we get this out. And actually, what we've got at the moment is so rubbish, even a 20% improvement would be good. But and my guys were saying, but why settle for 20%? And this is where it's again about the battle versus the war. So it was getting it across that you can, choose your battles wisely, and then you'll win the war. I'm rattling through now. So in summary, it was highly successful. I've had 20% kind of increase in the team. We've got a lot more collaboration. We're leading on a lot of initiatives in terms of strategically. We've brought teams across the organization through using our skills that we have in design and data, our ability to provide information, our ability to do design thinking to our own problems to solve how we actually succeed as an organization and solve those problems that we talked about. And when I talked about my son Anthony and looking at that user and preparing for that user in my home, what I wasn't looking at, or I have to look at, which I would say my team weren't looking at, was also looking at the other elements. I could make life perfect for him, but I'm then missing out the social workers. If I mess them up, they're going to say no. They'll take him away while he's still in the probation. If I mess up with the stakeholders I have in terms of my friends, family, again, I'm going to not have that support. Therefore, you have to really look beyond, and that's my really big thing, beyond design, understand the broader business, be prepared to rip up your own rule books, because you need to be able to define what you do to the business, but also keep adapting. And in our business, what worked for one person won't work for another. So do your research on your internal stakeholders in order to influence to get what you want. That's my summaries on that. Thank you.